If you're looking to buy a home in Oregon, whether it's your first time buying a home or you're moving from out of state, you want to know what it takes to afford a home before starting the process. Oregon is ranked 39th in the nation for home affordability, so it's no surprise that people are having trouble affording homes. In this video, I'm going to break down the monthly costs involved for a typical home in Oregon. I'm also going to share what you can expect for a monthly payment, what your salary needs to be to afford the average priced home, how much you need to have saved, and also what is perhaps the most important yet most commonly overlooked fact about buying homes in Oregon. So stay to the end to find out what that is. If you're buying a home in Oregon, all of this information is extremely important for you to know. So make sure you watch the whole video, and let's go ahead and get started. Okay, the very first thing I'm going to do is break down exactly what the different costs involved in buying a home are. The median priced home in Oregon is about $480,000, but for the sake of simplicity and because the numbers work out easier, I'm going to use $500,000 as an example. Your monthly payment is broken down into what we call PITI. That stands for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, which includes your homeowner's insurance and your private mortgage insurance. One important thing to note about private mortgage insurance is it's the main reason a lot of people say you have to have 20% down to buy a home. But that's really a myth. And in fact, very, very few people have 20% saved when they're buying their first home. In fact, many people, even when they're selling another home and buying a home, they find that it's more effective to either save some of that money or pay down other debts. Here's the reason. Private mortgage insurance is not a huge expense. For our case, in our personal home, it's about $80 a month. To save up thousands and tens of thousands of dollars just to save $80 to $100 a month, whatever it might be, for a lot of people, it just doesn't make sense. So I just want to point that out because you really don't need 20% down, even though if you have it, sure, great idea. Why pay mortgage insurance if you don't need to? But it's just important to know that you don't have to have it. All right, so I used an online mortgage calculator. I just used mortgagecalculator.org. There's tons of them out there. And I use this to run the numbers and plug in all the different variables involved in your payment. So things like taxes, interest rate, what is a mortgage insurance rate? What is your private mortgage insurance rate? What are all the different fees? It's really important to know what these things are because when you're just plugging things in or you're on Redfin or Zillow or whatever, sometimes the numbers that they have are not accurate. So you need to make sure all these things are right. I'm going to be giving you some of the most common numbers that I see, but you really need to check with the lender for your specific situation because I guarantee it's going to be different. I got my computer in front of me. I'm going to be going through the screen here and you can follow along. So this is for a typical $500,000 home. You've got a down payment of $25,000. That's 5%. Interest rate, 6.5%. This is changing all the time depending on when in the year you buy, what your credit is, how much you have down. This is going to change, but a common number people are seeing, and especially as we go through the year, 6.5% is the number I'm going to use. Loan term, 30 years. That's the most common that we see. Start date, March 2024. For property tax, I'm using 0.75% of the home's value. Now, this is going to change depending on where you are. In my county, Yamhill County, we typically see around 0.75%. If you're in Portland, you might see 1.5%. It also depends on how old the home is. There's a lot of different factors. All that to say, I'm going to use $3,750 for this case. Private mortgage insurance, I'm using 0.2%. That is a bit low. If you don't have good credit or depending on your exact situation, you might be a bit higher, but 0.2% is a good number to use for now. Home insurance, $900 a year is average. This can be as low as $500 all the way to like $1,200 per year. That's around $75 a month. So that's the number I'm going to use. Again, this is why it's important to talk to a lender and know exactly what your situation is going to be. Right, let's look at the numbers here. So $34.69, essentially, this is your payment with PMI. What this is saying over here is that after you pay off, once you get to 20% equity, then your private mortgage insurance drops off. So your payment's going to essentially drop just under $80 here to $33.90. So that's what your payment is going to be with a 5% down payment. So really expect somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,500 if you're buying a $500,000 home with 5% down. Now, this does not include repairs, utilities, all those things which are important, but it's not what your lender is looking at. It's not what you're going to be qualified on. So just know you do need to account for those when you're buying a home. but we're not going to be talking about that right now. All right, so some experts say that you want no more than 25% of your total income to go towards your mortgage. So that means for a $3,500 payment, you need to make 4 times that on a monthly basis. That's about $14,000 per month, or around $166,000 per year. If you make that, that's great, but a lot of people don't have that kind of money. So really, from a lender's perspective, a lot of times what we see is people somewhere around the 40 to even up to 45% debt to income ratio. Now, lenders don't want to see all of your debt be your mortgage debt, but if you have no other debts, it's not uncommon to see 40% debt to income for your mortgage payment for your total monthly income. So if you use 40% for your total debt to income ratio, if your payment is $3,500, you'd need to make at least $8,700 per month. And that comes out to a salary of about $104,000 per year. Now, that's still quite a lot of money, but it's not $166,000. If you make less than $100,000, you're either going to need to look at cheaper homes, or you're going to need to come in with more of a down payment. Also, keep in mind that you're going to need both your down payment and your closing costs saved up in order to buy a home. And yes, sellers sometimes do pay for your closing costs, but you may want to use those closing costs to buy down your interest rate, which if you're interested in that, reach out to me, because I'm not going to get into that for this video, but you can save hundreds of dollars a month by doing that. So really, you want to make sure that your closing costs are something that you have saved money for. General rule of thumb is to expect about 2.5% of the purchase price on closing costs. These are things like taxes, prepaid expenses, lender fees, things like that, title fees. I'm not going to get into all of that. Just know that around 2.5% or $12,000 to $13,000 is what you should expect for a $500,000 home. So if you got 5% down, 2.5% closing costs, you're really going to need somewhere in the neighborhood of $35,000, $40,000 in order to buy a typical home in Oregon. All right, now say you're selling your home maybe from another state, you're moving to Oregon, you've got $100,000 from that sale that you want to put into a down payment. So 20% down, you don't have private mortgage insurance. Let's look through the example again. Everything's the same, $100,000, 6.5% interest rate. Now, your rate would be lower with 20% down than it would 5%. I'm just going to use this number, keep it the same for simplicity's sake though. All right, so this is going to be a total monthly payment of about $29.15. So this is about $550 less than if you were paying with 5% down. So again, if you go up to that 40% debt to income ratio, you would need to make about $7,250 for that $2,900 payment. So that's around $87,000 per year if you're buying a $500,000 home with 20% down. All right, now here's where it's really important to say that the most important thing is to connect with a lender. Because until you talk to a lender about your exact situation, your credit score, what you have down, all the other different factors, you really don't know how all these different numbers are going to work together. And you don't know what you qualify for until you talk to a lender. So I strongly recommend talking to a lender at least 6 months before the time you think it's time to buy a home. Almost every time the lender is going to catch something, or there's going to be something weird with your credit score, or something's off on your income, they're going to need more information. So it's really important to get this process started ahead of time so that you don't have surprises down the road. Now, I do work with some of the best lenders in the state. So if you're in that phase, you want to know where you stand, definitely reach out to me. I can connect you to one of those lenders. They'll walk you through everything you need to know. It's completely free. They do free consultations. There's literally no downside to doing this. So this is what I tell everyone. Talk to a lender, figure out where you stand, even if it's a year down the road before you can buy. It's really good to know where you stand right now. All right, now before I get to the most important thing to know about buying homes in Oregon, obviously, if you're buying a home, you're going to need to connect with a good realtor. Now, if you're buying in Southwest Portland area, Yamhill County, where I am, I would love to help you out. But I don't serve all of Oregon, and I still want to make sure that you're taken care of no matter what you do. So a while ago, I created a video about all the skills your realtor needs to have. I highly recommend that because you want to make sure that you are taken care of well, that you're represented well, that someone knows what they're doing, they know how to negotiate, they're actually going to serve your best interests. That is extremely important. Realtor and lender also need to work closely together. So it's really important to make sure you have a really good realtor, a really good lender, helping you through what is, for most people, the biggest investment of their lives. We also have a buyer guide that will walk you through every step of buying a home, so you can check that out in the description below. Highly recommend that as well. All right, now, the most important thing to know about buying homes in Oregon is appreciation. Why is this important? Well, over the last 60 years, homes have appreciated on average just over 5% per year. Over the last 10 years, that number has been closer to 7%, although obviously a lot of that had to do with the last few years, so it kind of skews the average. However, the best forecasts are showing that appreciation is going to be somewhere between 5 and 6% per year. Here's why this is important. If you're waiting to buy a home, say you want to go from 5% down and you want to save up to 20% down, here's what you need to know is that $500,000 house is actually going to be a $550,000 house. You're going to lose out on $50,000 by trying to save $80 to $100 a month. And for most people, it's just not worth it. I've also had good friends who missed out on an opportunity to buy a home because at the time homes were $300,000 and they waited, and instead of buying a home, they decided to wait a couple years and see what happened. Well, now those homes are over $400,000 and they can't qualify for anything. That's really sad for me because I believe in home ownership and I want people to be able to live in homes. Eventually, Oregon is going to look a lot like Southern California, where people just can't afford homes and they have to move out to the Midwest. In fact, we've already seen a lot of that. So just be aware, if you want to wait to buy a home, go ahead. I just want you to be prepared and know what to expect, that homes are going to continue to appreciate over time. So again, what this chart is showing is that a home that right now costs $487,000, which is roughly the median in Yamhill County, is going to be over $620,000 in 5 years. So buying a home is a good investment, but it also means that if your salary is going to stay roughly the same, that you could get priced out of a home if you don't buy soon. All right, well, I hope this is helpful for you, having everything broken down, your monthly payment, what you need to expect as far as savings and closing costs, and what your salary needs to be. But again, you really need to make sure you connect with the lender because the exact numbers are going to change. If you're interested in learning more about the home buying process, we do have an entire buyer series that's really closely linked to our buyer guide, so you can check that out. Also, feel free to reach out to me if you have questions. I know buying a home is a really big decision. You want to make sure that you know what you're doing. Well, go ahead and check out one of those videos or one of the other videos on our channel, and I'll catch you in the next video.